It's good to know. So folks, the lesson today is about the relationship between privacy and computer security. There's actually a video with that exact title, one of those 3-minute videos that I mentioned. And so the idea being the difference between sort of laws and rules that we apply to our privacy as opposed to standards and practices that we have with our computers. So we need to sort of consider this. What is the right to privacy? Do people have a right to privacy? Well, that's kind of accepted everywhere, that and it takes different forms. So like, for example, I think I might have mentioned this in a previous class here in Qatar. Somebody has an accident with their car. You don't go and take photos of it and share it on social media. That's actually against the law, right? So there's a privacy law there. And there's many others as well. One of the things that we are particularly care about with our privacy is things that identify us personally. And there's laws about that. So things like, well, in the United States, they talk about their social security number, date of birth, these type of things, people will try and get that from you on the internet, because they could then steal your identity. So go apply for credit cards, things that would cause you some problem, and they would try and get some benefit out of it. So there's laws to protect our privacy, to protect that kind of information, so that people don't get it. Now the other thing about privacy that we have to consider is we're all connected. We're all using something over the internet at some point, and we do that for convenience. It gives us some benefit. That's why we do it. And then we sign up on somebody's web page, and there'll be a thing, do we agree to the terms? When we agree to the terms, what we're usually doing is we're surrendering some of our privacy. And so they're going to take information about us and use it in ways that maybe we don't care about, but maybe we do. And so you have to be aware of that. If you really want to make yourself aware of it, before you tick the box that says, yes, I agree, maybe just read what they're saying they're going to do, because they could be saying that they're going to take your personal information and share it with other websites. And, and how do they use that? So that would, consumer profiling would be included in that. You go and make a particular purchase, or you do a Google search, and then because of that, that information is associated with you, that you're interested in these things. All of a sudden, you start getting a lot of marketing that comes to you about that particular thing. And there's a video about that. One of the 8 videos is exactly that. E-discovery, maybe we'll talk about that as well in the thing. Discovery is a word that they use in criminal trials in the United States. So when the prosecution is trying to get their case together, they go through a process that they call discovery. And so discovery, they're going and getting all of the evidence that they can to show that there's some crime. E-discovery, I guess you can probably guess what that means then, right? It would be, is there any electronic artifact that could show that this person did some criminal activity? And then we can present that criminal artifact as part of our evidence in the prosecution case. So, for example, e-discovery might mean going into somebody's house and grabbing their computers, and then seizing their hard drives. It could also mean going and observing what that person has done online, seeing what they posted. It could also mean following their financial trail, things that they bought and sold over the internet. So that would be e-discovery. Workplace monitoring. Now that sounds weird, right? But if you're working off this network and you're an employee like myself, or you're a student, it's quite possible that the people down there at the end of this hallway in IT, they run the network. Everything that goes over that network, they can control it. And so they can see that you're spent 2 hours on Facebook today and 1 hour doing work. Why would they want to know that? Well, you ask yourself, imagine you're a manager, you might want to know that. As far as advanced surveillance technologies, I remember reading an article from like 2012, and at that point of time, it said that the average person walking through the city of London, when they refer to the city of London, the city, that's a very small area, downtown London, where all the banking and stuff goes, and that the average person walking through there would pass through something like 350 closed circuit cameras in a typical day. So walking around down. So the city of London is cameras everywhere, and a lot of other places are as well. In that corner, that's a camera. Smile. Okay, so that is being recorded. I mean, it's not just, there's not somebody there looking at the camera to see what we're doing. It's being recorded, right? Because what'll happen maybe is, you know, somebody left something in the classroom, and they go down to security. I lost it. Oh, when did you lose it? Oh, I lost it at 11:30. Okay, let's go and look at the camera at 11:30, and they can see what happened in the camera. So, I mean, that's being recorded. There may be a privacy issue there or not. Okay, so that's surveillance. So these are some things that we're going to talk about in this lesson. I've kind of sort of given you the short version of the lesson already, I think, but we're going to talk about information privacy. That's your information. How do we keep it private? Are there any laws that protect your information? Well, yes, there are. And you would have noticed, as I said, all these things where you accept the conditions. You know, do you think that they did that just because they want to make you informed because they're so ethical? Now, actually, no, there's a law that says they have to do that. They have to actually get your permission to use your information. And so that's what you're doing. That's governed by law. If it wasn't for the law, they would just take it and you wouldn't know. You know what I'm saying? So the law is saying you can't just take people's information. You have to ask their permission. Okay, here's a little thing at the bottom of the screen. Do you agree? Yeah, of course. We all agree because we want to use whatever nifty thing that they've got that they're presenting to us on the internet because it makes our life more pleasant in that moment. So consumer profiling, electronic discovery, I've kind of said these, right? Got those ideas, right? Consumer profiling, do I need to say it again, right? We know what the person likes. Oh, you know, there's another one. Remember this one, Facebook. Facebook they use artificial intelligence. So I don't know if some of you guys are going to do a degree in artificial intelligence, but the idea of artificial intelligence is you get a set of data, a big set of data, and you use that to train a computer program to recognize patterns. And having recognized the patterns, then we can make projections into the future. We can see what we think is going to happen because of this pattern like that, how would it extend into the future? Well, based on that type of artificial intelligence, that the algorithms that they had in Facebook, I read this article, it was a couple of years ago, but they said that they were able to determine how a person would vote in an election without having to read their posts. All right, you don't have to sort of say, oh, well, this person doesn't like that and they like that, but just by the friends that they have. Imagine, just so your list of friends, from that, Facebook is able to determine your attitudes and things like that. Electronic discovery, we talked about that. It has to do with criminal prosecutions. Workplace monitoring, yeah, the guys downstairs can look at everything we're doing, and advanced surveillance. We've got there's a lot more to advanced surveillance, and I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the use of IT in both government and business, balancing. So what do we mean by balancing? Is there any benefit from the government surveilling us? Is there any benefit from us giving our private information up to other private companies? Well, there must be, or we wouldn't do it, right? Yeah, so that's what we mean by balancing. Yes, it is good for the government to know things about us, and we give that up freely. And in fact, some of that is in the law. We have to do it. All right, the guys come around and they do the census, and you have to answer those questions. That's the law, right? And that's your privacy, but that is a public good. With the private companies, we see that as a private good, right? We're happy to surrender some of our private information to them because of the benefit that they give us. So it's a two-way transaction, right? You win and I win, we hope. And but then the balancing is, okay, well, what happens to that information now? Is it, who's going to see it? I said you could see it, but are you going to let anybody else see it? It's that type of thing. And so that's where we have to have our privacy laws to say that, yeah, I did surrender my data to these guys in exchange for some benefit that I received, but I didn't say that those guys could have it. You know what I mean? And so we put that into the law so that we restrict what they do with it after they've got that information about us. And so, as it says here, information is going to be gathered, stored, analyzed, and it could affect your life quite strongly. Targeting methods. One of the videos that you guys can watch shows a guy, and as I said, I'm not going to ask you to, we're not going to watch the video here. You watch it at home. The guy, he wants to ask his girlfriend. No. He's had this girlfriend for 5 years, and his friend says, maybe you're going to get married. And, then he says, well, nah, I won't. Then he goes and he sits on his computer and he goes, oh, get married. Oh, yeah, I'll just Google. How much does it cost for a wedding ring? And, based on that, within about 20 minutes, everybody knows that he was shopping for wedding things, right? Because of that, he started getting ads about wedding things. And then his boss calls him into the office and saying, what are you doing, man? You're supposed to be working, but I know you're Googling. And, by the way, would you invite me to the wedding? So it's kind of a funny video, but have a look at that. You'll enjoy that, I hope. Yeah, organizations do need basic information to serve their customers, and it certainly lets them do it better. And you think about it, the big organizations that are making a lot of money, one of the things that they do that makes it possible is that they're very, very good at getting that information about their customers and using it properly. So for example, Amazon, eBay, they will give you recommendations, based on your previous whatever. And it could be based on, you did a Google, like this guy. I did a Google on a wedding ring, then all of a sudden Amazon saying, hey, look at this wedding rings and look at these wedding rings. Where'd that come from? And so they're able to sort of do that. So Google is giving information away to other private companies. Okay, so there are laws. So we said that we have to have some balancing in that. We do have our private information is getting out there to be less private. And so there has to be laws to sort of keep that in mind. As it says there, the government, business. Now, actually, in the next couple of slides and videos, there's a sort of a whole lot of history about the various, well, over the last 20, 30 years, how government, particularly in the United States, how they have gone about sort of trying to protect the rights of people for their privacy. Yeah. I don't know what you think about this. I know that at some time in my life, I've been all of these things. Sometimes I've thought to myself, well, I got nothing to hide. I'm not doing anything wrong. And so, I don't care if people know everything about me. So, yeah, here's my information. I'll go for it. But when I think back on that a little bit more, I'd sort of say, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm not doing anything wrong now because of the way the laws are and because of my particular situation. But I don't know, maybe in 10 years' time, the laws will change and things that I've been doing that are legal all of a sudden become illegal. In the United States, so I keep bringing that up. Okay, so I'm just going to say it. All right, so you could have a person come to you and they're obviously a man, and they would say, you call me she, and you forget, and you call them he, and that's against the law. All right, and so then all of a sudden, boom, all of this stuff, and then they go back and look through all your history for the last 10 years and found out that you said something like this in a lecture, right? And then, oh, so yeah, so I'm not doing anything illegal now, but who knows next year, oh, yeah, okay, you identify as a little dog, but actually you're obviously a human. Is that going to be against, anyways, I don't want to go any further than that, but you get the idea. the laws change. They don't always stay the same. And, you know, you might find that people will be able to dig up information on you from the past, which looks bad now. Didn't look bad before, but now it does. You see what I mean? So you don't know where we're going with this stuff. So yeah, maybe everybody should be concerned. So here's some of the things that might impact your privacy. Automatic license plate readers, that's pretty obvious, right? Every time you go through a intersection here, and this, even you're breaking the law or you're not breaking the law, that's being recorded, right? Your car goes through there. It's not just they're taking the photo. Now they take the photo of the guy who goes through the red light, boom, or the guy who's speeding. They get a light and they get a thing, but everybody else too. I mean, they got a video going there all the time. And so they can see if you're going out there and doing something strange in the intersection. So in the United States, they're using that to identify people who have warrants on them, or yeah. Cookies. So the cookies thing is, you'll see that when you go to a site, that's the thing, I accept cookies, right? Basically what a cookie is going to do is it's got some information that's going to be saved on your computer, and their website, next time you go to that website, it'll pick up that information from your computer, and it tells them a little bit about you, you know, where you were last time, what you bought, that kind of stuff, or could be lots of other things. So the NSA, you may have heard of them before. The NSA is the National Security Agency. It is the overseeing body over the CIA, and I think also maybe the FBI. Anyways, they're kind of super spies. You guys, you don't need me to tell you this stuff, right? You've seen all the Jason Bourne videos and all that, right? You know, so the super spies, what they do, a lot of what they do is just stuff on computers. I mean, you know, it's not actually sort of going out there and getting into kung fu fights with people. It's a lot of them are just sitting there at a computer, just getting data and you know, working on analyzing that. So, I mean, if you're a really, really hot computer expert, you know, artificial intelligence, there's a job for you at the NSA. Absolutely. There's a job for you. If you're the best in that field, they will hire you, and they'll give you a very nice salary to do that, because that's the type of people they're looking for. They're not looking for the guy who's got the kung fu arts. Not so much. They're looking for the guy who's pretty smart in computing, because they do a lot of that. Anyway, so what they've been doing, as you see, they're recording all telephone conversations with certain countries. Prism is another one about that. Now, that one was also contents of emails. Now, there are laws about these things, right? So the Prism law, you know, you've got a Fourth Amendment in the United States which says you can't, you can be secure from searches and seizures. So with American citizens, they can't really do this. But you'll notice that these are places where they're not American citizens, so they can do that. Smart TVs, your TV is listening to you. Your phone is listening to you. Please watch the video there. One of the last videos there was Snowden, Edward Snowden video. And he basically says, you know, whenever I buy a phone, first thing he does is open up the phone, and he takes out the microphone, and he takes out the camera. And then if he wants to talk to somebody on the phone, he plugs in a microphone, you know, a outside microphone, so that that's not going to the NSA or whatever. Yeah. Hardware device. Oh yes, so this is a nice one, right? So law enforcement agencies can do you would call this a man-in-the-middle security attack. Man-in-the-middle is where two devices are trying to communicate with each other, and then you put a device in between them, and it pretends that it's, you know, so you got device A, device B, device C comes in and pretends that it's device B. So device A will communicate with it and think that it's communicating with device B, and it'll pretend that it's device A. And so it's picking up their conversations, right? And just, so awesome way of doing spying. Government does that. Imagine, they got this actual project to actually go and sort of spoofing cell towers so that they can capture information. Whoa. So what is the idea of the right to privacy? Some people would say it's a basic human right. You have the right to privacy. You have the right to be left alone. And you have the right to have people, communications privacy means people aren't listening to what you're saying. And data privacy means that information that's been collected about you should be kept private. And yeah, there it is. Okay, so there's a lot of laws that are regarding this, and we'll try and go through a few of those. Some of these are specific to the United States, and some of them are sort of, well, the GDPR, the general, what is it? The European Union has data privacy laws that we all sort of accept. And the United States accepts the GDPR because they have so many big tech companies in the United States, which have a global presence. And so they have to deal with people in the European Union. And so because of that, they have to follow the European law. Otherwise, the European governments would say you can't, you know what I'm saying? So Facebook and WhatsApp and all these other big tech companies that are dealing in a global way, they have to obey that European law, because otherwise the European countries would say, well, sorry, you're not obeying that law, so you can't operate in Europe. And Facebook would say, well, we actually like operating in Europe. We kind of make some money doing that. So we're just going to obey that law. Now, when I said that Facebook makes money, you might say, well, Facebook never charged me anything. That's right. Facebook's free, right? So how do they make any money? Exactly. So you are the product. That's how Facebook works. So you sign up to Facebook, and Facebook sells you to lots of companies, which then send you stuff so that you'll buy it. So you are the product, and they make money out of that. And maybe you guys met Nalan. He used to be here before, one of my colleagues. Maybe you didn't. Anyways, he wouldn't have a smartphone. All he had was one of those old, 3220 Nokias. And for this reason, because of the privacy. I mean, I haven't been as worried about it. You have to decide your own sort of privacy posture on that, what you think is reasonable. So yeah, there's some laws on that. Now, this thing here, there's a Data Privacy Act in the United States. Various states, there's states in the United States, they have a lot of power at the state level. So I mean, state governments in the United States can have laws which are only for that state. So for example, I mentioned the European Union GDPR, their rules. The government of California has data privacy laws which are even stricter than the European ones. So if you're in California, you got a lot of privacy there, supposedly, right? But in other states, that law doesn't apply because it's California law. And so the United States federal government doesn't have laws as strict as the European Union, but certain states do. And so here's another one. Well, California, Colorado, Utah, and Virginia, and Connecticut, they have this special law, which is really quite strict. So what does it do? You can opt out of processing their personal data for targeted advertising, sale of personal data, and automated decisions. So you have an ability to sort of say, you have to take me out of your systems. My data is going to be private. I don't think I have to say too much about the financial data. Financial data would be anything to do with your accounts, credit cards, things like that, credit card numbers, passwords, banking account numbers, etc. Obviously, if that information gets out, that could be bad for you, right? That's why you're receiving phishing. You've heard of phishing? Phishing with a PH. Phishing attempts is when somebody will contact you and try and get some of that information from you. And so the scams are they could be as simple as the one that I received a couple of times is I get this email and it looks like it comes from It looks like it comes from Aramex, and it sort of says, you know, you have a parcel, you know, and contact this. And I'm like, I know I don't have a parcel. And, you know, that's like a $20 charge or something. All they want is my credit card number, right? You know, and there's no parcel, you know, I mean, they're just going to try and defraud you in that way. And so that's a big thing. I can't sort of overemphasize my contempt for people that do that. You know, they're really, really, I think, really bad. You know, we're not going to get caught because you guys are interested in computing. And so you know this. If you didn't know it before, you know it now, right? You know, the Aramex scam and the other scam, and there's all these scams. But there's people who are sort of, you know, they're not interested in computing and they might believe this. And, you know, it's really just not fair. So governments recognize that, and so they bring in laws to sort of protect that too. So credit cards, loans, etc., that kind of information. Right, so the next little bits are kind of history of some of the laws that have been put together to try and protect us. So fair credit reporting in the United States, every time you want to do anything, and I'm having this trouble at the moment because my wife's in the United States and she's trying to get an apartment. Anything you want to do there, you have to, everybody goes and checks your credit score. So your credit score, you have to build up by paying off all of your bills, never skipping any payments, that kind of stuff. And, you know, as a foreigner going into that country, you don't have a credit score. So it's very, very hard to sort of do anything. You sort of have to do everything with cash. Now, so you have this credit score and it's going to be a number between like 400 and 800 or something like that. And if it's up there around 800, that means you're awesome in credit, you know, and everybody will let you in. And it really is important. If you go to buy a car or something like that and you want to buy it on credit, if you got a good credit score, then you're going to get a low interest rate, you know, 2%, something like that. If you got a bad credit score, they're going to charge you like 10%. If you go to rent a house and you got a bad credit score, the people just going to say no. So there's all kinds of sort of issues regarding that. So we have these 3 credit agencies in the United States, and they're keeping these credit scores on you. And so what what this law said is that you're entitled to sort of have a look at that. You know, you're entitled to have some impact on that. Who can look at that credit score, and how it can be, and can you look at that credit score? And so that there was laws to sort of make that possible for you. And these things here relate to that as well. All of these things, actually, I've made some notes on that homepage. So for all of these things, like they're all basically what we're looking at here is a evolution of this type of better laws, we hope, that are more protecting of privacy. I guess you could say it's kind of like this. Before we had computers, you know, where was your information? It was on bits of paper somewhere, right? And so the chance of that being sort of abused was less. But now that it's sort of so easy to move information around, so we have more chances. And where there's more chances for abuse, you get more abusers. And so there are more abusers. So we've had to have our law sort of catch up with that. And so we've had these things here that you see over time that we get new laws. Now, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, that was an act in, as it says, 1999. It replaced a Glass-Steagall Act, which the previous act came after the 1930s. And what it said was that banks could only be banks. They couldn't do other financial services. And so this Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, what it said is that no, banks could be deregulated. Banks can do other stuff besides just having bank accounts. So they could offer investment advice. They could be investment bankers. They could sell stocks and shares, this type of thing. So basically banks became wide open. And we got these super banks, JP Morgan Chase, and the Bank of America. And You may be aware that in 2008, they had a huge problem with those banks. And some people say that it's because of this law, right? So there was a number of banks that went bankrupt, and they had this thing that we refer to now as the bail-in, which is basically the American government sort of gave $700 billion, I think, to the banks so that they wouldn't crash, because if the banks crashed, then the economy crashed. Now, I think that those banks did pay them back. So otherwise, there'd be a lot of angry people around, right? So there's also laws protecting your health information. So they have, now this is where the United States is actually sort of pretty good. They got this HIPAA thing, which basically says that you can't share people's health information. So that's important for hospitals and doctors and clinics and things like that. Now, not only does it say that you can't share people's health information, but it says that you have to secure it. It's not just good enough to you not going out and sharing things. You have to make sure that people, that is protected. The level of protection is enough that that information is not going to get out. And if you don't protect it, you then go foul of the law, and you'd be subject to a civil case, but also possibly a criminal case. And that has happened. Okay, so yeah, there it is, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, basically saying that, look, you can't just give people's private health information away. Now, why would anybody want that? I suppose, I don't know. If you went to the United States, it is a strange place, I have to say. I'm learning how more strange it is, because as I said, my wife's moving there. But if you watch television in the United States, you know, the ads on TV, you know, instead of selling, you know, like milk and eggs and stuff like that, what they're selling is drugs. I mean, drugs that your doctor will give you, right? You know, ask your doctor, you know, about this. So it's kind of a strange way that they market drugs, and people do their own research on, you know, what drugs they should be asking their doctor to prescribe to them. And yeah, it's just a huge industry. So you can imagine that your XYZ drug company, you'd love to have the information that's in that hospital in their files about all these people, because then you could direct market to them, right? And so, yeah, so that's kind of not allowed unless somebody gives their permission. So that can't be sold. You can't sell their thing. You need to have audit trails and encryption. Oh yeah. So the encryption thing. Watch the Edward Snowden video. You'll like that. That's one of the best videos of the links that we've got there. And he mentions the fact that prior to 2013, people didn't sort of worry about what the government was doing. And that, you know, he's a little bit of a narcissist. I sort of picked up about that. You know, the world doesn't revolve around Edward Snowden, in spite of the fact that he might think it does. But he's a pretty smart guy. And so that's when he made his revelations in 2014. But since then, laws have come in to make sure that ordinary traffic between 2 points in a large network isn't naked in the network. What I mean by that is that somebody can't just plug into it and read it and understand it. So we're encrypting everything. So things are being encrypted. Actually, if you watch that video from him, you'll realize that that's not even enough, because what Snowden is saying is, well, what if somebody has an exploit? You ever heard that term? Exploit? So an exploit is where you determine that something on somebody's system has a weakness. We understand that weakness. We write a little program to take advantage of that weakness and hack them, basically. So targets for exploits that Snowden talks about would be the operating system on your computer or your phone. So if you had an exploit for Microsoft Windows, or an exploit for Android operating system, or an exploit for the iOS operating system on your Apple, then you can get into that operating system. When you're in the operating system, you got everything. You got everything on that machine. So encrypted or not, right? You got the encryption, and you know, you got it in its unencrypted state. You can do anything with that machine if you can exploit the operating system. And this is what he's saying is happening. So that's kind of amazing. I guess that's why he takes out the phone microphone and the camera, because, you know, if the government or some bad actor is able to get into your operating system, then they got everything on your phone, right? Whatever's happening with your phone, they've got it. And so they could use that against you. And as I said, well, I mentioned the government, but it wouldn't necessarily be the government. Maybe it'd be a foreign government, all right? So that attacks individuals, and that happens. Or maybe it would be just some person. So that seems to be the end of those slide things. What I'm going to do before I finish the lesson is I just want to go back to the home and just briefly go over the other aspects of today's lesson. So there is, if you follow this link, that is a chapter from the textbook. And this goes through all of the things that it's maybe 50 or 60 pages. So, you know, you want to tuck yourself in tonight with that it's a couple hours reading, you'll enjoy that. Then there's some videos that I'm not going to go through, but you could enjoy them. This one's only a couple minutes. And basically the idea there, I have sort of given you a summary of what it is, that there's a difference between data privacy and information security. There's a video on that, where data privacy is going to be an area where we're going to have some legal sort of interest, and information security is just going to be processes that we do in the IT area. Here's another one. So this one here is the video where the guy does a Google on the wedding ring, and then he finds that his private information is gone everywhere. So you might like that. Then there's looking at these definitions of these words. What's the difference between privacy and security? This video here, it mentions that most breaches are actually human error. And this is kind of an important thing. So if you're looking at it from the point of view of maybe you're going to be a manager in a company sometime, you know, maybe as an IT manager, or maybe as a manager, right? You would care about your company's health. And basically what this is saying is, if your company is suffering breaches, then that's going to, you'll lose your customers, basically. So that's that one. So this one here about the data privacy explained. So these two here, this one here and this, they're by the same guy. In the first one, basically he just talks about the difference between, as it said, personal privacy. No, sorry, it's not talking about difference, just talking about personal privacy. Now, this PII, that PII, personal identifiable information, that's the kind of information that if you had somebody that wanted to steal your identity to maybe open up a financial account in your name, right? That would be that. So what do they need? If you're going to open a bank account here in Qatar, you would need to have person's birth certificate, birthday, maybe their passport details, Qatar ID, all right, and maybe some photo evidence, something like that. Most places it's kind of something like that. So if that, you probably wouldn't want to just be leaving your Qatar ID around where other people could sort of, you know, use it because of that, because then they could steal your identity and go and do financial transactions. Now, some of you might think it's kind of wistful I'm saying about that in Qatar. I think the laws here are a little bit stronger than, say, in somewhere like the United States. And so that's probably a little less likely. But definitely in the United States, people are fishing for people's social security number. So that's like your QID. And then anything else to identify you. And then they will try and do financial transactions in your name. And so the next video, which is this one, number 12, this one here, he gets into talking about the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, which is stronger than the federal law in the United States, but not as strong as the California law. But the thing there is there's 3 points to it. The right to rectify. Rectify means to fix it. So if you have somebody has got some personal data on you or financial data on you, which is incorrect, then you have the right under this law in the European Union, you have the right to have that changed to be corrected. So that's an important part of the law. The right to be forgotten, basically in the United States, that's called the right to erasure, which basically means that you can ask a company, you know, you have my private data, I want you to forget it. I don't allow you to have that information anymore. I don't allow you to share it with anybody. I'm finished with this interaction. Yeah, I have the right to be forgotten. So that's that. And the right to speak. So these things are in the law. They are the law of the land in the EU. And so you may have noticed when this law came out, the GDPR law came out in 2018, it reached out and touched you. And so I know it reached out and touched me because all of my social media, et cetera, like that had to become in line with the European law. And so I started getting these messages, you know, please read these. We have changed our privacy rules. Please read this and agree. And so that was because of the GDPR in 2018. The last right there is you have the right to take civil action, which means that you can sue a company that has your private information and uses it in a way that is hurts you. Basically, if it hurts you, then. Now, in we mentioned the health law in the United States, which protects health records. Canada has its own law. There we go. It's called PIPEDA, and so that provides a strong security posture. Then, as I said, there's a nice video there from Edward Snowden. I do recommend you you watch that. I'm not making you watch it now, but you could watch it. Trouble with the metaverse video, I recommend that to you, is also because it's more local. It's actually an Al Jazeera video, and so I don't know, maybe you might even know this lady who made that. So it's probably made here in Doha because it's Al Jazeera, and basically she's talking about online games. So what's the online game? Horizon venues. So she starts it with quite a shocking story of this girl that went online. You make an avatar in these games, apparently, and this avatar was assaulted in the in this story, and she thought that was quite bad. I guess so. You may have heard of Cambridge Analytica. I don't know if you've heard, but that's kind of like the Facebook thing that I was talking about. Cambridge Analytica is quite controversial because it was used by the Brexit, would you call it the Brexit party? I don't know. The people that wanted to get the UK out of the EU. They had a referendum on it back in, I don't know, 2015 or something like that. But there were people that wanted to be out of the EU, and they used this company, Cambridge Analytica, to do analysis of people's presence in social media. And based on their presence on social media, they were able to target people who they thought they might be able to influence to vote for Brexit. And so some people say that affected the election. And there has been, I guess you'd say, there has been other elections where it's been said that the social media has been influenced in that way. And of course, we have this concept. They started talking about it in the 2020 election in the United States. Fake news. All right. So basically, targeting information at certain people that was not correct. So that's kind of all that we've got for today. Thanks for sort of being able to sit through that. I hope that's okay. Any questions? I hope you learned something. I don't know this anyway. So you can go and watch the videos. You can read the text chapter if you feel like that. Next lesson, we will have a quiz at the end of the lesson. So there's one more lecture in this week. Some more stuff on this topic, and then there'll be a lecture at the quiz. The quiz is on chapter 2. Okay, the quiz is on chapter 2, and that's kind of all I got for you. So Wednesday.